Just press record. Alright, there's a time comes when things need to be handed over. Sometimes it's sad, sometimes it comes with great joy. You might have to hand over the keys to your car or to your house when you sell them. You might have to hand responsibilities over to others. I know as a parent it's a great joy when your kids learn to wipe their own bottom. You can hand over the bottom wiping responsibilities to them. Here you go. I know it's a great joy, we can hand that over to them. A time will come though when you will need to hand over your job to somebody else. It's possibly a job that you worked very hard at for many years. Time will come when you need to hand it over. And you don't want the next person to stuff it up. In the past, I've watched a variety of reality shows, including ones where people buy storage lockers or the workers' pawnbrokers. I like to see what things are worth when people bring them in or they get them in the storage locker. And I like to see people get really good bargains. One of these shows that I've seen is based in America, in Detroit, out of a store, American Jewelry and Loan. So the dad there in the middle is Les, and he will one day have to hand over his business to his children. He often speaks about it in the business of that. And as Les's son, Seth, he's already a co-owner of the company. Seth hands sort of the marketing division and claims that if it wasn't for him, the shop's only marketing campaign would be an ad in the Yellow Pages. So in the end, Les will have to hand over his business to his son, who will hopefully grow the business by using the internet and not just having a physical store. See, Les, he wants to hand over the business into good hands and passing the baton on. He should want to see that grow after he's handed over the reins. And in today's passage, we see that John has handed over the reins, handed the baton on to Jesus. Jesus now is the go-to person for God's ministry. And to do this, it brings John great joy, because there's joy in knowing the one who is above all and brings eternal life. We see joy and truth and life because of Jesus. And so this morning, as we work through the passage, we'll see it under the following 3 points, if you can see it on the screen. The joy of knowing Jesus in verses 22 to 30. The truth about Jesus in verses 31 to 35. And the life through faith in Jesus, verse 36. So if you'll see that the first point has more verses, so we'll spend more time on that and release the last one with one verse. Now, so the passage. So after the conversation with Nicodemus, Jesus and his disciples then head out to the countryside, out of the city into the fresh country air. A good place to be baptizing people, it seems, because John, he's still around there baptizing people. Later in John 4:2, it actually tells us it's Jesus' disciples that are the ones doing the baptizing, not Jesus. And it's interesting to see that despite the fact that Jesus' ministry is growing, gaining momentum, and the people are still going out to John the Baptist to be baptized. And while John's out there baptizing, verse 25, an argument developed between some of the disciples, John's disciples, and a certain Jew over the matter of ceremonial washing. An argument about washing. I think we might have to get used to arguments about washing soon. Will you actually make people that come into your house now go and wash their hands before they enter? I actually watched a video this week on a 20-second video on how to do the recommended washing of 20 seconds. For those who haven't seen it, you've got to turn your tap on and then you wet your hands. Then you rub your hands with the soap for 20 seconds. Then you rinse. Then you dry with paper towel, and then you use a used paper towel to turn off the tap. Tap's on for 30 seconds or more. So much for reducing our water usage. It seems that coronavirus is trumping water restrictions. But for John and his disciples and this Jew, there was an argument. It could have been that the Jews, they misinterpreted what John's baptism actually meant. Or maybe they just didn't agree with what John was doing. We're not actually told. But interestingly, the debate was something that this Jew said seems to hit a bit of a nerve with John's disciples, with some of them, because verse 26, they came to John and said to him, Rabbi, that man who was with you on the other side of the Jordan, the one that you testified about, look at him. He's baptizing and everyone is going to him. Jesus' popularity is growing and John's disciples are starting to get jealous. It's like me last week. I went to the supermarket. And then as I walked in, I saw everyone's trolleys, so everyone had toilet paper. And so I worked my way into the store, and the pallet of toilet paper just ran out. You see, everyone around you has toilet paper, and you don't. The temptation is to be jealous, thinking, in the past, I had plenty, but now I don't have so much, and I actually want more. These disciples, they've been with John for quite a while now. Had great crowds, many people coming to them, but now they don't have as many people coming to them. And they wanted the crowds to come back. A bit like the AFL at the moment, isn't it? Well, the crowds to come back. To have the crowds like they used to have. They wish it's like the good old days. And so it seems that these disciples of John were resentful about what was happening. And many people today, they're taking out their frustration on the supermarket staff. They want them to do something about the lack of toilet paper, the lack of food. Here, John's disciples, they want John to do something about Jesus doing all the baptizing. All those baptizing, all those in the past will come to them. Just like the supermarket staff can't do anything about the lack of stock, John can't do anything about his situation. Often we can be like John's disciples, can't we? Jealous. We want to be first. We want to be the best, the centre of all the attention. We want to actually be able to report back to the baptism headquarters that our baptisms are up. We want to make sure that we're ahead of all our rivals here around Craigieburn for ministry prominence. We need to listen to John's response, verse 27. To this John replied, "A person can receive only what is given them from heaven." There's no resentment, no envy on John's part. What do we have that we haven't received? God's sovereignty is behind everything we have as humans. And when we get jealous or envious of others, maybe those who've got more toilet paper than us, among other things, we despise the gifts that God has given us out of his wisdom. Like what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 4:7, he says, "For who makes you different from anyone else? What do you have that you did not receive? And if you did not receive it, why do you boast as though you did not?" But John doesn't wish to be Jesus, does he? He doesn't get envious of Jesus. John doesn't covet. John isn't concerned that more people are going to Jesus than him. He continues, verse 28, saying, "You yourselves can testify that I said, I'm not the Messiah, I'm sent ahead of him." Then John the Baptist knew that both him and Jesus had been given different roles. And John was completely content with that. Unlike his disciples, John wasn't concerned that the news of Jesus' popularity growing. John had prepared the way. John had pointed to Jesus. And now his testimony of the Messiah was bearing fruit. People were going to Jesus. John continues by giving an illustration. Verse 29 saying, "The bride belongs to the bridegroom. The friend who attends the bridegroom waits and listens for him, and is full of joy when he hears the bridegroom's voice. That joy is mine, and it is now complete. He must become greater, I must become less." The friend who attends the bridegroom is the ancient equivalent of the best man. On December 9th, 2006, it was my great pleasure to be the best man at my brother's wedding. It was a great day, a great privilege to be standing next to my brother as he got married. I wasn't jealous. I didn't want to be the groom. I was very happy for him and for my sister-in-law. John is saying here, I'm not the groom, that's Jesus. Jesus is, and the bride isn't mine. John's saying, I'm the best man. I get to go to the wedding and stand right next to the bridegroom as he enters the joy of this wedding. For John the Baptist, it was a great privilege. It brought him great joy, and greater joy than anything else. John didn't covet the bride. John was delighted to stand with the bridegroom on the occasion of this wedding. So John found his greatest joy in knowing that the groom and his bride were being united. John would have known that there was many Old Testament passages that pointed towards the faithful within Israel as the bride of the Lord. We can see in Isaiah 62 and Isaiah 2, where it says, in Isaiah 2, 16 to 20, it says, In that day, declares the Lord, you will call me my husband. You will no longer call me my master. I will remove the names of Baals from their lips. No longer will their names be invoked. In that day I will make a covenant for them, with the beasts of the field and the birds of the sky, the creatures that move along the ground. Bow and sword and battle I will abolish from the land, so that all may lie down in safety. I will betroth you to me forever. I will betroth you in my righteousness and justice, in love and compassion. I will betroth you in faithfulness, and you will acknowledge the Lord. John is saying that it's the Jesus that he has introduced to the faithful remnant of Israel is no other than Israel's King, Israel's Messiah. After Jesus' resurrection, the church sees Christ as the bridegroom and his church the bride. For those of you here, they're in your handout. There you'll see the references there, 2 Corinthians 11, Ephesians 5, Revelation 21 and 22. So the joy of the best man belongs to John the Baptist. Here John the Baptist means that he has the final and the ultimate satisfaction of knowing that his God-given ministry is successful. He was called to go before Christ, announce his coming. His job's now complete. A job well done. John knows that God's determined will is now that Jesus must become greater and he must become less. And he's very content with this and actually sees it as a necessity. Do you have that same joy for Jesus, that you just want Jesus to be in the spotlight? Can we say that, no, don't look at me, I'm not great. Look to Jesus. It's very different from many of our times we try to witness to Jesus today, isn't it? Often we sort of think, we tend to say or sound as though we're saying that, look at us, look how great we are, how amazing I am, and look at me, I've figured out life. Do like me. Isn't our intellect just so stunning? The reality is we can't actually point people to Jesus until you've learned to not point people to yourself. Our witness of Jesus is only effective when we get out of the way and let them see Jesus and point to Jesus. Like John the Baptist, not like his disciples in the story. So John, he recognised the central role that Jesus, the Saviour, must play. And so much so that he's full of joy, isn't he? Full of joy as he sees and recognises who Jesus is. And he sees that people are seeing that and beginning to follow him. Follow Jesus. So John would not be a witness if those that are spending time are talking about how wonderful he is, how wonderful John the Baptist is. He would have actually failed as his witness. He'd only be witnessing to himself. So instead, though, they are following Jesus, and therefore John rejoices. So I think our witness to Jesus will be free, it'll be easier if we begin to and think less about how impressive we are, or how, maybe for you it's how unimpressive you are. Less about what they might think of us, the people out there. More and more about Jesus himself and the response of people to Jesus. They'll help us be more effective and more joyful about who Jesus is. Because we'll be able to actually be truly compelling when we point others to Jesus Christ. I mean, of course, there is something unique here about John's witness, isn't it? John, saw Jesus, and we don't. John was a prophet in the Old Testament